Hello, thank you for watching. YouTube channel finlarg made a video accusing Ken Ham of being a liar. Ken Ham bears false witness was the title. Here's my thoughts on some of the things they said in that video. Ken Ham used the word, they were doing a review or refute of Ken Ham's video first, and this is my review of a video of a review of a video. Ken Ham used the phrase, Bill Nye the Science Guy. That's what his TV show was. finlarg thought there was something wrong with calling him that. At one point, Bill Nye did make some harsh accusations that if you don't believe the evolutionary story, that you're bad for society. And Ken Ham quoted that and had that video there. And then finlarg denied what was in the video of Bill Nye. Bill Nye was encouraging people who believe in evolution to not pass that belief onto their kids, who believe creation, not to pass that on to their kids, because Bill Nye said we need scientifically literate voters and taxpayers. So you're harmful to the country, according to Bill Nye, if you don't believe the evolutionary story and you're a voter. And he also said we need engineers. So Bill Nye said you cannot do those things if you don't believe it. Ken Ham cited that. finlarg lied about whether Bill Nye said that when Bill Nye did say that. Ken Ham didn't say humanists can't do any science at all. But that's what finlarg made it sound like. No, Ken Ham was just saying that Bill Nye is a humanist. It affects the way he looks at things. And it affects conclusions he comes to in the way he looks at evidence of historical things. finlarg made a stupid statement. Oh, there are Christians who believe in evolutionism. They're dual religionists. There's no way to squeeze God into that evolutionary story. But there are some people who try to do it still. finlarg claimed abiogenesis isn't evolutionism, isn't evolution. Yes, it is. I wonder if finlarg has done any petitioning or letter writing complaining about textbooks, science textbooks that have abiogenesis in them. If he has done that and it's just not well publicized, I apologize. But right now he looks like a very dishonest, disingenuous person to claim that's not part of evolution when it's in the science textbooks that are teaching evolution. finlarg was nitpicking whether millions or billions of years was the right number of years about something Ken Ham said when he was giving a summary of evolutionism. That's not lying about something if you're being lazy about getting whether it's millions or billions of years in some made-up story. Ken Ham pointed out that there's observational science and historical science, two different kinds of categories. And Ken Ham, if you've watched one of his videos somewhere on them, he's got a quote from a secular source pointing out that there are two different kinds of sciences. Observational science is things that we can test. It's learning about the physics, chemistry, how things work. That science is what is used to make cell phones and cars. Historical science is trying to figure out what happened a long time ago. And we can't be as certain of that stuff. We can't retest, a billion years ago, I think this happened. Well, then let's retest it. Well, you can't, but you can retest observational science, like certain size of pure copper lets a certain number of volts or amps through it without overheating. Water is composed of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. And we can test that. If somebody says water is made of 2 oxygen and and 10 plutonium, we can test it. We can get some water, we can observe, we can be certain about that. But finlarg, stupidly, either he's too dishonest to be honest about the fact that there is a difference, or too dishonest to admit that there's a real difference. That Ken Ham quotes people who are secular scientists who acknowledge that difference, who say there's that difference. Or finlarg is very, very stupid. I don't know which he is, a liar or stupid to not see the difference, not acknowledge the difference. Ken Ham pointed out Bill Nye is an engineer, which means he's not really a good source for scientific information anyway. He learned how to engineer airplanes to make sure all the parts on an airplane fit right. finlarg accused Ken of using straw man arguments. That's arguing against something that somebody doesn't believe. Let's see, which straw man was, but Ken Ham doesn't use straw man arguments when he says that everything is believed to have a common ancestor by evolutionists. That's what they say, that's what their books say, that's what they believe. That's not a straw man argument. Ken Ham said there's a strong, you have a stronger basis for your morality if there's God that says what's right and wrong, as opposed to you being just another animal with your brain that evolved for your survival to, make good decisions. finlarg quoted the story of Elisha and the bears from the Bible as a way of accusing the Bible of not being moral. But he did a bad summary of that story. The Hebrew word for it that's translated as children in some translation of the Bible in that story just means an unmarried man. It could be a bearded adult man that's not married yet. That qualifies for that word. Ken Ham never said that you need to see every single step, every little thing that's happening. You can't draw reasonable conclusions. But the evolutionary conclusions are not reasonable conclusions. finlarg gave an example of if you wake up in the morning and there's snow or ice outside, you know it got below the freezing temperature for water. Ken Ham isn't saying you can't use, that's a reasonable observation based on facts and observed phenomenon, that hypothetical scenario where you wake up and you didn't need to watch a thermometer where the temperature dipped down. You would just see, well, ice, that happens when it's cold, we know it got cold. That's the kind of logic Ken Ham uses. That's not the kind of logic used to draw the conclusion that all life on Earth has a common ancestor. finlarg said nobody is suggesting dinosaur bones are labeled. Ken Ham pointed out that, I think this is where Ken Ham was pointing out that when you dig up a bone in the dirt, it does not have a label, died this and that year. People have to do some thinking and some guessing and some inferring and drawing some conclusions. It's not obvious, like if I find a car on the side of a road, I know it was made by a certain company because they put their label on it. Ken Ham said that Bill Nye doesn't want children to think critically. He doesn't want them to learn how to think critically. If you think critically, then you see the holes in the evolutionary story. But finlarg didn't refute that. He never was able to find a quote of Bill Nye saying, let's have the kids hear both sides of the argument and all the evidence and ideas so they can come to an educated conclusion. finlarg claimed that truth is counterintuitive. He gave the example of the elements. You but that's not a good comparison to... It's not that counterintuitive. We see fire, but we know things taste differently, even if they look very similar. But his claim was we only see air, water, and fire and dirt, so that's all we're going to think there is. It's counterintuitive, the periodic table of elements. No, it isn't. That's not... It's not counterintuitive. It's reasonable and logical that there probably are different kinds of dirt, different specific smaller parts or elements of different things. Whereas evolutionism, all we see are animals giving birth to the same kind. We see animals that are more different from the common kind or norm, not able to survive in the wild. That's not... it is counterintuitive to think that a dog at one point in the past had an ancestor that wasn't a dog, but that doesn't make it bad logic or untrue that the dog never had a non-dog ancestor. Finlarg claimed that when Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, he thought the sun was the same size as the moon and the same distance from the earth. But he was just making that claim based on the size of the sun in the painting. I'm not aware of Michelangelo making any statements to the contrary, but that's not a good... They might have understood accurately about the sun's size or distance a few hundred years ago. Just because in a painting they make it the size that we see it now, or in a painting that had a limited size, they didn't make a realistically proportioned size sun in the painting, doesn't mean they had a wrong idea about things like how close it is to the earth or the size of it. Finlarg claimed he doesn't mind religion, he just doesn't like pseudoscience. He lied. Evolutionism is religion. It's not scientific in the sense of his observational science. It's not something we see happening. Nobody has ever seen an animal give birth to something different enough to call it a different kind. And genetic mutations that we have witnessed make things less survivable in the wild, make things worse. They don't create new things. So Finlarg, I have watched enough of his videos to make an educated guess, a reasonable inference about what his beliefs are. Finlarg seems to be an evolutionist who wants his religion taught in science textbooks. So he's lying when he says he doesn't mind religion, just don't put it in science textbooks. He wants his religion in the science textbooks. Let's see. Yeah, he never refuted... Doesn't refute children hearing one side. Okay. Yeah, Finlarg never refuted Ken Ham's accusation, which is a true accusation, that Bill Nye does not want children to hear both sides of the argument of the evolutionism. But Ken Ham pointed out that Christians, majority of Christians, even conservative, Bible-believing, young Earth creationists, they want their kids to know the story of evolutionism and the weaknesses with it. They don't mind kids hearing that story. They just don't want that to be the only one, and they're annoyed with that being taught in science textbooks and science classrooms, where time could be spent teaching actual science. Yep, but Finlarg accused Ken Ham of lying when he said that he wants his kids to hear both sides of the story. Yeah, or both sides of the debate about origins. So, thank you for watching. Now you've heard me talking about the video where Finlarg bore false witness when he accused Ken Ham of bearing false witness in the video that Ken Ham made that Finlarg replied to, or did a review of.